You're listening to the Life Friendly Business Podcast. I'm your host, Erin Thomas Wong, business mentor, author, and founder of the Cocoon VIP membership, empowering women around the world to build businesses on their terms. If you want to grow and scale a business that works in harmony with your family and your life, this podcast is for you.
Hello and welcome back to the Life Friendly Business Podcast. Today we are busting a myth. This is the myth that if you work part-time in your business, you'll only ever be earning part-time money. I'm interviewing Ali Geake, a donor communications consultant who's got over 20 years experience in marketing and communications for both corporate and non-profits. Back in 2020, she was crazy enough to set up her own business in the middle of a pandemic. We talk in this episode all about the steps that she has taken to stick to her life-friendly business boundaries. And even with doing that, she still managed to triple her income and avoid burnout. Hello, Ali. Thank you so much for joining me on the Life Friendly Business Podcast.
Oh, such a pleasure, Erin.
So tell us, first of all, what was the catalyst for starting your own business?
Yes, a mixture of things, really. I think I was experiencing burnout, or at least the road to burnout, in my more sort of corporate-y type job. I was, the red flags were there, shall we say. And I noticed that I needed to change something. And also I had hit 40 and I'd had that sort of midlife clarity, as I like to call it, rather than crisis, and just wanted some time out to reassess. I figured if I'm 40 and I've been working for 20 years, I'll be working for another 20 years. Then I'm just halfway through with 20 years experience. So even if I started from scratch, there was still loads I could do. So I kind of just jumped out of work and started with a blank sheet of paper.
Wow, that sounds exciting and daunting at the same time.
Well, yeah, especially as this was March 2020 as well. So my my nice plans of having some brain space were interrupted by homeschooling. But about 6 months after that, I was thinking, what job shall I go for? What job shall I get? And then I had a chat with someone, like a mentor, and he said to me, or, you know, you can start your own business. And as soon as he said it, I thought, yes. And the one thing for me, not for everyone, but the one thing for me was that I thought, yes, I never want to have to ask for annual leave ever again. And that was it. Didn't look back.
And that is so important, especially when you've got kids as well, because they have so much time off school and, you know, we really need to factor that in. So can you just explain a little bit about what you do now in your business?
Yeah, it's evolved over the last couple of years, but I now describe myself as a donor communications consultant, which basically means I work with nonprofits, helping them with their fundraising, specifically in the area of communications. So creating impactful material, helping them practice conversations with high net worth individuals, talking to their team about the importance of communication in donor retention, things like that. My background is all marketing and communications, and the fundraising thing kind of happened by accident. But sometimes your niche finds you, as I say. So that's my business now.
And how have you found that transition from working for someone else to now kind of selling your own services?
Yeah, really hard. I was freelancing for a long time before I sort of set up my own thing and tried to sell my own package. And I didn't realize that they are kind of almost the two sides of the same coin. You are self-employed, but one, you just do what the client asks you to do. And the other one, you have to think of everything. And you have to put yourself out there in a way that was very different to freelancing. It completely took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting it at all. I found it very difficult, and it took me a long time to adjust to the mindset of being an entrepreneur rather than just like a worker bee. Moving from worker bee to queen bee. Ooh, I like that.
I love that. And did you find that you were suffering from like imposter syndrome and things like that when you were making that transition?
Oh yeah, 100% all the time. I mean, the life of an entrepreneur is a roller coaster of emotions, isn't it? And someone once described it to me as performance development on steroids. And I couldn't agree more with both. Imposter syndrome all the time. And to the point that even other people were pointing it out in me. Like, Ali, why are you lacking so much confidence? Ali, you're so capable. Ali, I think you just need to believe in yourself, things like that, because I was questioning my right to be there, my right to sell something, because I would just look at all the other people doing it better, who had done it for longer, and thought, oh, I can't play in that game.
I think that's something that many people listening to this will resonate with. And especially, in the world of social media, we get to see everyone's front stage all the time, don't we? And we don't really know what's going on backstage, but we compare to people's front stages. So how is that journey going for you? What have you done to be able to kind of overcome that imposter syndrome?
Yeah, good question. I've done a few things. Number one, recognizing it is quite important. And recognizing the symptoms of it as well. It wasn't necessarily that I felt that I didn't have the confidence. Sometimes it was the opposite. I felt like, what's wrong? I should be able to do this. But it was showing up in other ways, like I would change my offer every month, or I would change my audience every month, or I would stay in the who is my ideal client circle forever. And actually sort of trial and error realized that sometimes getting out of imposter syndrome is just getting on with it and just try and seeing the whole thing as an experiment instead of the finished product. I think being surrounded by other entrepreneurs, especially women, especially mothers, just because we have similar challenges and similar barriers sometimes and similar comments that we get. And so, yeah, being part of the Cocoon, and I've also signed up for your Evolve Mastermind 3 times now. That has significantly helped it, just in the being able to address it, label it, talk through it, and come up with some strategies that I wouldn't have come up with on my own.
I think
it's very real.
Yeah, it is very real. And I think what you said then about, actually sometimes one of the best ways through it is just by taking action and feeling like you have the support to take that action. Because I talk quite a lot about the whole self-fulfilling prophecy, because we can get paralyzed, can't we, with the imposter syndrome and the self-doubt. So we don't take action. So we don't make any sales, and then we don't make any money. And we think, well, I knew I wasn't good enough in the first place. But actually, it's just that we haven't been taking that action and we haven't been moving the business forward.
Yeah, 100%. And was it Ford who said, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And sometimes it's the sort of thing I tell my children, and then they kind of have to tell me back. You have to suddenly hear yourself saying, yeah. And I mean, it's a lonely life being a solopreneur for sure. And so being connected with others has really been very helpful in combating some of the mindset around running a business. And I think the mindset about being a CEO and the mindset about charging have been the 2 things that I've probably had to work on the most in the last 2 years. But taking the time and doing the deep work and taking advice and mentorship has meant that I'm a completely different business leader now than I was 2 years ago when I literally knew nothing.
I love hearing that. And I think that you're absolutely right, that making sure you've got that support around you. And also, with Evolve, it's the whole idea that you have these like critical best friends who like literally will keep the mirror up and show you, hang on a minute, like, are you making this from a place of fear? And they're saying it with total love, but they're, like you say, you and your kids, you have to remind each other, because the mindset work is an ongoing thing, isn't it? And we can feel like we've got it nailed, and then something happens and we feel triggered, and we can go back to, our old patterns of thinking. And it's so helpful to have people around you who know you well enough to recognize that and can help you move through it.
Yeah. And then celebrate with you when you do. So yeah, it's a double whammy.
Absolutely. So you mentioned having kids there. Mm-hmm. So how has it been with trying to adopt a life-friendly business approach for this business?
Constantly changing, because your kids go through different stages, don't they? When they need you more, and then they need you less, and then they start signing up for the clubs and all of that. And so there isn't really ever one size fits all when it comes to a life-friendly business. But I think being able to be flexible as they change has been very important. I think one thing I did right from the beginning, which when in hindsight I look back on was a good move, was to put my boundaries in place from the start. I think I had heard that said from another coach or someone somewhere online at that time, that if you basically work crazy hours to try and get a successful business, and then take away those hours to get a life-friendly business, it's never going to work. But if you start with your boundaries in place at the beginning and then build up, it's far more sustainable. So I did that. I marked off the hours I wanted to work, the holidays I wanted to take, and then basically constructed my business around that, rather than the other way around.
And how's that worked out for you? Because some people might be a bit nervous that if they do that, if they kind of put their own needs first, that it will make it much harder to get the growth in their business that they want to, because of all these messages that we hear about having to go all in and, the hustle and the grind. How has it been for you?
It's been brilliant. I think a lot of the hustle and the grind messages come from men. And not to be anti-men here, but I also see the same people a few years later saying, it's not all about the hustle. I've neglected my family. I'm going to take a step back. So it's a bit easier for men sometimes to do that than women. We are hustling, but in a different way. And I think that for me, it's also proved the point that there is a myth that that if you work part-time, you get paid half as much. I have set boundaries. That means I work part-time hours. But I think any mother listening to this will know that you can get an awful lot done in 3 or 4 hours that you maybe would have taken 7 hours to do in a job before kids. You become super productive. There is a deadline. You've got to go and get the kids at this time. You make it work. And I think working mums are the superpower of this country, and highly undervalued and under-recognized, because we are super efficient. So working part-time for me doesn't mean I do half the amount, and it shouldn't mean I get paid half the amount either. I reckon in 20-hour week, I can do as much as I ever did in a 40-hour week, to be honest, just because you take out all the water cooler moments, the chit chat, the meetings, all the extra bits and pieces. And I reckon if someone in a corporate world had to track how many hours they actually worked, you'd be looking at something a bit more part-time. So I think it's worked very well for me in my business, because I haven't had that mindset of more work equals more money, more hours equals more money. So my advice to be for anyone out there who is thinking about how to structure their business and whether they can pull it off part-time is to give it a go and forget what other people are saying about the notion of what part-time means, and think about what you want your life to look like, and then work to make it happen, because it's entirely possible.
And have you found that it is possible to earn the money that you want to earn working those hours?
Yes, not immediately. You know, when you get these success statements, they are very rarely overnight. It has taken me 2 years of hard slog and very many moments of thinking I need to quit and go and get a job. But yeah, I've tripled my income now from the first year. I'm on a trajectory to earn what I want to earn. And I'm not subscribing to the 6, 7, multiple 6 figures, blah, blah, blah. I want to run a successful business, but I don't need millions to take home. I want to cover my outgoings. I want to provide for my family. I want to leave a little bit of comfort. I want to be generous. I want to stay working my hours, and I want to do work that's fulfilling for me. And so far, I have found that that is possible. It's not easy. And, you know, you always have that fear in the back of your mind as an entrepreneur is it sustainable? Okay, it's happening now, but will it happen next year? But I think now I know it is possible. I've got a lot more confidence to keep going.
So that leads us on nicely to talking about what your measures of success actually are. So, you know, you're doing really well financially. You're managing to triple your turnover. What else means success for you?
Just one word about the finances is that I think from the very beginning, because I really needed to make the money, and because I had a bit of not a chip on my shoulder, but I used to earn good money in corporate, and I was getting annoyed that I wasn't getting anywhere near that. And I did for a certain amount of time, and maybe I still align my self-worth with a certain salary bracket. However, now I am hitting that salary bracket or exceeding it even, there isn't this sense of arrival. Oh, shocker. So I have had to really think about what success looks like beyond the bank balance, because more money in the bank, I mean, I think we all know it, but it's interesting that when there is the money in the bank, that is not the only measure for sure. The other measures of success for me are my own mental health, the amount of white space I have in a week. Those two are directly connected. And yeah, whether I am also doing work that fulfills me, you know, am I slipping back into just doing whatever to get the money, to get the bills paid? Or am I actually doing work that I feel is in my zone of genius or in my zone of excellence? Go back to your first question around what was the catalyst for me setting up my own business. One of the things was in a freelancing role working for another company. I honestly felt like I was working at about 10% of my potential, because I was just like, this work needed to be done. They knew I was capable of more, but there wasn't really the setup to allow me to be creative and to develop things and to fly. They just needed the work doing. So that's another measure of my success now. If I can get to 70, 80% of the time that I spend working, doing stuff that I really love, that is good enough for me. You're never going to get 100%. You're always going to need to suck up 20%, whether you're in a job or whenever you're running your own business. There's always going to be elements that don't make you jump out of bed in the morning, but they allow you, that 20% allows you to do the other 80%. So yeah, that's how I look at it.
Have you found yourself having to make difficult decisions to keep aligned with that then, you know, making sure that you're doing the stuff that brings you joy, also keeping that flexibility and white space? Has that led to difficult decisions?
Yes. And I am a chronic overthinker, over worrier. So those difficult decisions have probably lasted longer than they needed to. Yes, definitely. I mean, I've had clients, or I've had potential clients wanting to work with me, and I've just felt like this is not work that's going to light me up. I think probably quite a number of the people that listen to your podcast will recognize that feeling you have when you think, I'm not sure I want to take this contract. And I have done in part in the past, and I've been proved right. I shouldn't have. And then actually, interestingly, I've said no, even when I needed the money. I have sometimes said no because I just thought, this is not why I set up my business. And I have never regretted saying no when I didn't feel like it was right. I've also been offered jobs 2 or 3 times, which I have carefully considered all the times, but they were full-time jobs. Some of them involved being in London 3 or 4 days a week, and I live on the South Coast. Some of them involved, full-time hours and giving up my business. And I must admit, sometimes that was very tempting. The lure of a regular paycheck is tempting, but I didn't want to give up I have a Wednesday where I don't tend to work for my business and the kids are at school, and I don't call it a day off because it isn't. I call it my capacity day, because that day tops me up, gives me my capacity for the other 6 days. For me, having 2 children at the weekend I find energy draining. As much as I love it, I am tired. And so if I don't have a day off in the week, if I don't have time for myself in the week, then, after a few weeks, I'm zonked. So I have Wednesdays as my capacity day, and a full-time job would not allow me to have that. And at the end of the day, that was too important for me, more important than a regular paycheck. And I had to just stick to my guns and protect it.
And absolute kudos to you for that, because it's a scary decision. Like you were saying, when you really need the income and opportunities are coming up, but your gut feeling is telling you it's not right. It is very, it's scary to decide that you're going to say no. But I think, what you've proved so far is that you are able to stick to those things, and you're still making a fantastic success of your business. And, I think that's one of the benefits, I think, of running your own business, is the world of opportunity that is open to you, if we're looking ahead at what might be next. So what is coming next for you?
I don't know. I think one thing I've really learnt as actually being part of the Evolve group is how little control we really actually have on most things in life, let's face it. And even as a kind of planner, organizer, strategist, over-worrier, overthinker, I do better when I just take my hands off and go, let's just try it. Let's just see where this goes. And that's something I've learned from the other ladies in the group, just adopting that mindset of it's all an experiment. And so I like to learn from my lessons as I go along. I'm 43 years old, and I've learned that I need to listen to my gut, and I need to protect the things that are really important to me. And if I throw that all out the window for a full-time job with a nice paycheck, I'm not going to enjoy it. It's not going to work out. It's not going to work out. I've done that. I've been there, done that, got the T-shirt. Sometimes you just have to have the courage to stick to the lessons that you've learned in life. And one of the major lessons I've learned in the last 2 years is that you can't predict what it's going to look like. You don't know what's going to happen, but you can set yourself up in the way that you want your life to look as much as you can, and then see what happens. So I don't know what's coming next, but hopefully it will be lots of fulfilling work and my Wednesdays stay protected. I've got a fairly full calendar now for 2023, but I do have some capacity later on in the year. So I'd like to do a little bit more thought leadership stuff. I wouldn't mind trying my hand at maybe a couple of speaking opportunities, and putting myself out there a little bit more. We'll see.
Yes, because one thing you're really good at is injecting that personality into what you do. And I know that, the whole journey of becoming visible and doing all those things has been something that you've embraced. You've got your own podcast, which is all about keeping it human as well. So, how do you inject personality, especially if you want to be seen to be very business-like, like on LinkedIn and platforms like that. How do you manage the juggle?
Yes. Good one. I think it probably is going back to trial and error and seeing it all as an experiment, and also going with your values. I think I've seen a few people on LinkedIn now do really well with embracing who they are and really going with that and not caring what people think. Now, not to the extreme, but like if you follow, is it Leah Turner on LinkedIn? She's a LinkedIn expert. She's kind of covered in tattoos, and she's really like gone against that narrative of tattoos are unprofessional. And another person that I've really enjoyed watching on LinkedIn is Marion Ellis, also part of the Cocoon and been involved with me. She does incredible TikToks and she puts them on LinkedIn, and she's a coach for surveyors, a business coach for surveyors. And that's an incredibly like, suit and booted industry, but she's managed to bring humor into it. So I think I've been inspired by at least those two anyway, and thought, well, what is it about me that I want to bring out? Or what is it that I just don't care if people don't like? Because you can't please everyone. Not everyone's going to like you, but there's still enough clients out there. So I've just started talking about things like, I love film music. And I started talking about that. And all of a sudden, 2 of my clients are really, really into film music, which I would have never known otherwise. And now we have a much stronger bond as a result, because I went there, because I thought, oh, it's a bit geeky, but hey, my name is Geake, so living the brand. I love Lego. I know you think I'm crazy, but that's like my mindfulness thing. But I actually managed to work with another lady just because I posted something about Lego. And so I think life's too short to just be bland and do what people expect you to do. I think I'm still professional, but I think having a bit of personality makes me stand out as well from other people.
Absolutely. And, the whole saying is that people buy from people. And, with small business owners as well, we are our own USP. And I mean, LinkedIn has changed so much over the years. And before, you never would have talked about personal stuff. But the posts that get the most reach now are where people are real. Yep. It's really valued now.
Yeah.
So where can people find out more about you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. In fact, I'm pretty much only on LinkedIn. I am on the other platforms, but only as a sort of, private personal account. But for business, I'm on LinkedIn. So you can find me at LinkedIn, Ali Geake, ALIGEAKE. My podcast is called Keep It Human. And that's mainly for nonprofit leaders looking to improve their communications with donors. But there are so many communication techniques in there. If you just replace donor with client, the same stuff applies. So you can check that out too.
Lovely. And our last question, if you could go back in time and speak to yourself when you first started this business, what advice would you give yourself?
Well, that's a tricky one, because I often say, if I knew what I knew, if I knew how hard it would be at the beginning, I would have never done it. But I'm glad I didn't know, because I'm glad I did. I think I would say JFDI, just do it. And I would say you have everything in you that you need. Just trust yourself and surround yourself with a crowd of people who support you.
I think trust is perfect for this. Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you for having me, Erin.
Does every win feel slightly tinged with guilt? Do you have your best month ever financially in your business, but yet you feel like it's been at the detriment of your health or your family? The success and fulfillment you're looking for can only be enjoyed when your business and home life are balanced in harmony. It's time to stop trading off between life and business. It's time to evolve them both. Join me for our next 12-week Evolve Mastermind, where you'll work towards your next stretch business goal while maintaining the balance across all areas of your life, so that when you reach your goal, you feel successful, not exhausted, behind, or neglectful. It's time to take back the power. Find out more about the Evolve Mastermind at lifefriendlybusiness.com.